In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the rest of the Season 6 patch notes for SMITE. I already did a video going over most of it, so this won't be a long one. Like, I already covered all of the item balances and the stuff coming to Conquest changes and the stuff coming to Ranked and all that, so if you want to see that stuff, I'll go ahead and link that in the description, because I just don't really see a point in making two videos over the same subjects. What I'm going to do is cover all the new stuff, like the skins and, of course, Merlin's abilities. And I think there's like one new change to the gods that I will cover. So we'll go ahead and... Actually, I'm going to go start with the one god change now, because I do remember what it is, and that was Ratatasker can now, I think, sell his acorn, I believe. We'll go ahead and find it, because I don't... Yeah, Ratatasker can now sell his acorn, so that is the one new change that is coming to that. The rest of it is going to be the cosmetics, and then, of course, Merlin. So we'll go ahead and get the cosmetics out of the way first, since there isn't that many. So we have Knight of Mordred Achilles.
I serve the one true king.
Kind of thought that was Ares for a second there. Lady of the Lake Freya. That's going to be a really cool skin. Freya hasn't had a skin in a while, right?
Come, rest here by the water and feel its aura soothe you.
I'm trying to think of the last skin she had, and I can't even remember, so it had to have been a while. Infinite Shift Sun Wukong. That looks amazing.
It has been a long journey, and it has brought me here. I shall teach you what I have learned.
It kind of reminds me of the Void skins, and it might actually be one, but I don't think it is. I just think it's kind of similar to that. Heavy Hitter Anubis. I'm usually not a big fan of the simpler skins, but this one looks really cool. I do like this.
Every day is such a hustle. That's because my life is such a bustle.
A perfect example is like the Mercenary Mercury. Like, I just didn't like that one. Or Swift Messenger, something like that. Dragon Empress Scylla. No voice pack working. Don't we already have... Doesn't she already have a skin like just like this? Or is it like a recolor of that? I don't know. Let me know if I'm crazy or if she already has a skin like that. Because I'm pretty... It's like... She definitely has a dragon skin already. I know I'm not losing my mind. Gladiator Guan Yu.
Once we enter the Colosseum, the only way you leave is in pieces.
Then we have Scarlet Judgment Nemesis. Yeah, this has to be a recolor because Nemesis has a skin just like this as well. And it doesn't have the voice pack. So these are... I think they did this sometime last season. They took popular... skins that were a little bit harder to get, I think, and then they made like different variations of them so other people could get them. So I think that's what those two might be. Golden Touch Baron Sumney. This, I thought it was just a mastery skin update, but no, that's no voice pack with that, but that actually looks pretty cool. It's kind of just a tier 2, I think, but I think he's just gold with a white suit, which looks awesome together. And then we have Steamy Chibi Soul.
I've been burning to meet you guys all day! Hi! I'm Sol. Nice to meet you.
And then, of course, Merlin's Masteries, which we will go over in another video. So the final thing for this patch notes is going to be, of course, Merlin. I already went over kind of how his abilities were going to be in a previous video, but now we can actually see his abilities. So his passive is called Overload. Every time Merlin casts a spell, he gains a stack of Overload. When Merlin next fires a basic attack, it'll be augmented with lightning, dealing extra damage to the first enemy. So 10 plus 15% of your magical power, max of 3 charges for 5 seconds. That's pretty cool. Kind of acts like a Polynomicon a little bit right there. Now for his whole kit, I'm going to actually start with his ultimate and his 3 because he's just weird. It's going to take a lot of explaining, so bear with me here. His ultimate is called Elemental Mastery, and this is basically allowing him to change stances. He has 3 different ones, being Arcane, Fire, and Ice. So Merlin taps into his inner potential, exploding with energy in the stance he is currently attuned to. During this time, Merlin can choose which stance to enter next. So basically, you hit 4-1, 4-2, 4-3. 1, 2, and 3 being Arcane, Fire, and Ice. So you hit 4 first, and then you can switch which one you want to go to, or you can just hit 4 and it'll automatically go to the next one that's in line. Kind of similar to Cernunnos when you just kind of switch with him. But with Cernunnos, you don't get to choose your stance after. So when you do that, after the explosion reaches its apex, it collapses on itself. So when you switch your stance and use your ultimate, you're going to send out this little like explosion underneath you. And that's going to explode in the stance you're in. So if you're in Arcane stance and you hit your ultimate, you're going to explode with Arcane damage. And then if you're switching to Fire stance, the explosion is then going to collapse back inward to you in fire damage, and each explosion is going to have its own benefit. Make sense? Probably not, but again, just bear with me. I'll have another video out after this actually showing you how his kit works, so that might be a little more helpful. So enemies are dealt damage from both explosion and the implosion and suffer different effects depending on which stance. So the explosion and implosion is going to be 100 to 260 plus 20% of your magical power. So your ultimate is dealing some damage as well. It's not just a stance switch. Now, if you get hit by fire, what it's going to do is burn you and cause some burn damage, being 5 to 25 plus 5% of your power. Now, that's if you're hit. Now, that is if you hit them in fire stance or if you're switching to fire stance. So as long as the fire stance is involved in any form from the explosion or the implosion. The radius is 25. It costs you 40 to 80 mana. The knockback, or the knock up rather, I think it's a knock up. I don't really think it's a knockback, is arcane. So if you're in arcane stance and you hit them, it's going to knock them up. It also has a cooldown of 28 to 20 seconds. And then the burn, wow, they organize these really weird. So the burn time is going to be 0.5 seconds for each interval. Cooldown, mana, the knockback is for arcane, and then the slow is for ice. So the different effects: burn if you're in fire, knock up if you're in arcane, slow if you're in ice. So arcane and ice is a really good combination. If you can knock them up with arcane and then slow them with the ice, pretty good. And then the slow is going to last 1.5 seconds. So that is your ultimate. Your 3 is going to be the same through all your stances, and it's flicker. Basically, it's a combat blank. It's not long, it's pretty short, and I don't think you can even go to another side of a wall in Conquest. I think they said just in Arena, but it is a combat blank. So it only has 30 range, costs 70 mana, and it has a pretty long cooldown of 22 to 18, and this cooldown stays the same when you switch stances. So if you can't flicker, ultimate, and then flicker. Once you flicker, you gotta wait no matter what. And that's all it does. There's no benefit to this, no speed boost, no nothing. It's literally just a small combat blink. So that's his ultimate, that's how you switch stances, and that is his 3. Now the other 2 abilities are just gonna be different depending on the stance you're in. So we'll start with his 1, I guess. So your ability 1 in arcane stance is called Eclipse. He conjures an orb of condensed celestial energy that grows in size as it travels. I'm going to actually explain this in my own terms because this just sounds confusing. So basically he throws out this little orb. You can control how far it goes. It has a range of 60 at max. And the orb actually grows in size. So if you only throw it right in front of you, it's going to have a smaller radius. Actually, we can see it right there. It's going to be a 5 radius, and the max radius is going to be 15. So it basically just grows the longer you throw it. And it's going to deal damage on the initial hit, being 40 to 120 plus 70% of your power. And then if you get hit with it and you stay in the little range. So, okay, now this is going to be hard to explain. Basically, if you get marked, the radius is going to increase a little bit, and if you stay within that range, you're going to be taking tick damage, or marked damage, which is going to be 5 to 45 plus 10% of your magical power. Kind of a confusing ability. It's really unique. It's going to last for 3 seconds and has a 14-second cooldown, and then again every 0.4 seconds. So it's basically a dot, kind of, but it's really weird how it can grow and everything. And then your 2 in your arcane stance is called Vortex. He's going to drop a field of arcane energy at a location, and it kind of acts as a, think of a Cerberus ultimate almost, except it's not around him. You can pick the area where you want to set this, and it's very small, and it's going to have a little delay and then explode. It deals damage, and then it just pulls him to the center. So not really the same thing as a Cerberus ult, but, you know, along the same lines. Damage is going to be 50 to 170 plus 60% of your power. Has a max range of 60, is going to cost 60 to 80 mana. The radius of it is 20. Excuse me. Cooldown 16 to 12 seconds, and then it takes 0.5 seconds to actually deploy. And the duration is going to be 1 second. So that is your arcane stance. Your arcane stance is going to be like your main lane clear because it's pretty safe. And it's your best lane clear situation. Now, I guess we'll do, what's next? Fire stance? Okay, so fire stance is going to be like your burst. This is going to be up close, kind of risky, but you can absolutely shred people with this combination. It kind of reminds me of like Anubis, where you lay down the hands and just, oh god, the Locust, whatever, the freaking Anubis combination. Everyone does. It just melts. So First, his ability 1 is going to be called Radiate. So Merlin channels a beam of intense fire for 2 seconds that deals damage every 0.5 seconds. This honestly reminds me a little bit of Anubis's ult, where you just kind of send out a beam and it deals tick damage. It's not as powerful as that, but you can move around. Very slowly, but you can move around. Each time Radiate hits an enemy, it also applies a burn, dealing additional damage over time. So the damage is 10 to 50 plus 35% of your power, and then the tick is 5 to 25 plus 5%, has a 45 range, costs 60 mana, a radius of 5, cooldown goes down from 16 to 12 seconds. The whole ability is going to last 2 seconds, and the intervals are going to be for 0.5 each, and the dots are going to last 2 seconds. Now, you can combo that with your 2, which is called Dragonfire. So Merlin summons forth 2 ethereal dragons that spout flames toward each other, dealing damage to enemies every 0.25 seconds. Basically what you do, this looks like 2 dragons come out of the side, obviously, and they have a cone. And in the center of each of their cones is like an eyeball-shaped logo. And if they're in that little radius, I should say, an eyeball-shaped radius, if they're caught in the center of that, they have a protection shred. So what you can do is summon your 2, make sure they're in the center, and then cast your 1 so you get extra damage from your 1 because you have a protection shred. And you can absolutely burn people down with this. So the dragons last for 3 seconds total, and then your 1, I think, lasted for 2 seconds. So by the time you cast your 2/1, they'll pretty much stop at the same time. So the damage is going to be 8 to 20 per tick plus 25%. 30 radius of it costs 60 to 80 mana. The cone angle is going to be at 80. Cooldown goes down as well from 16 to 12 seconds. Last 3 seconds. A protection shred is going to be 0.5% all the way up to 2.5% at max rank. The debuff is going to be 4 seconds. It can stack up to 8 times, and it's going to cost you take 0.5 seconds to actually deploy. So the 2/1 and fire stance is pretty nasty. Now we have one more stance, and that is going to be your ice stance. So your for ice stance is going to be your range. It's the safest one. Doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but you know, it's safe. So arcane is kind of just your normal lane clear. Fire is if you want to go in and mess someone up. Frost is your safer distance, you know, tower camping a little bit. So your 1 is called Frostbolt. He just hurls a Frostbolt that explodes if it hits an enemy, dealing additional 20% damage if they are slowed. So this kind of reminds me of Hell's, what's that? Her 1 in her dark stance, her lane clear basically. It's literally that where it explodes on contact. Actually, no, it's a little different because Hell's, you can clear minions with it. You can't clear minions with this. It explodes on anything hit, whether it's a minion, jungle camp, enemy god, it explodes on hit. But the ability itself kind of looks exactly like that, except it's in frost form. It's going to deal extra 20% damage. We already went over that. The damage is pretty low, 60 to 220, but it has a high scaling at 70%. High range at 70, costs 60 mana. The explosion AoE is 10, and then it has a cooldown of only 6 seconds though, so low cooldown on the frost stance as well. And then the 2 for your frost stance is called Blizzard. This is kind of like Zeus's ultimate, but smaller radius and not as powerful. So Merlin creates a blizzard at a target location. After a brief delay, shards of ice start hurling down every 0.5 seconds. Enemies hit, take damage, and progressively get more slowed while they stay in the area. So the slow starts off weaker, but actually gets stronger the longer they're in the radius. So the damage per tick is 30 to 70 plus 20% of your magical power. It has a range of 65, costs 60 to 80 mana, has a 20 radius, and the cooldown goes down from 16 to 12 seconds. Takes 0.5 seconds to deploy. The slow is for 8 and can stack up to 5 times. Duration lasts 2 seconds. So overall, I mean, I think I went through his whole kit because the ultimate, his ultimate is basically stance changing with a little bit of extra effect. His 3 is a combat blink, and then 3 different stances for his 1 and 2. So pretty confusing. They made it sound like it's not that hard in the patch notes, though. They said that it takes some time to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's easy. I hope so. It doesn't seem like that because he's just so unique. That puts a whole new spin on stance changing gods in Smite. So that is going to wrap it up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, be sure to drop a like, hit subscribe for more content. I will be doing the actual video on Merlin in-game shortly after this, as well as all of the skins that you can see down here, so be on the lookout for that, and thank you for watching.